Close with Jason has lost his voice.
Are you contagious?
No, I don't think so. I feel good. That's my voice. I'll keep the distance. No, so I'm a principal of Pond Cove, and one of the issues with this area is just a safety concern, obviously. So on the other side of that yellow sign right there, it directs visitors to look into a camera, and in which staff in the office, which we'll just take a peek at for those of you that are not familiar with exactly where the office is on the other side of those doors. Those doors are open during the day. Students have phys ed class in there and need to travel to the cafeteria, so we can't really lock all this down. So although we do a good job with security, it's still not desirable to remotely buzz someone in and have them enter the school without someone immediately there to greet them. And so, of course, ideally, we would be able to let folks in from the elements, but they would not be just in the school. They would be in an entryway, airlock type area, and then we could interact with them through a window of some sort, and they may never even have to come into the school. But right now, everybody has to come in before we really have a conversation with them. So that's not ideal. And we can just kind of shoot down here and I'll show you. So folks are buzzed in and they have to go to the offices right here.
So this is a pretty good example. Like that could be a class going on. This.
Right. Class going on. These doors are open all the doors. And so they would have to come here and the office would be there. So it's a far distance to travel.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Too far for comfort. Yeah. So that is something that stands out to me in terms of this, the entryway area being outdated.
All the other doors in the building are locked during the day?
Yes.
Okay.
The doors are locked all around. We do train our students not to let anyone in, even if they ask. They all have the yellow signs, and they say, go to entryway 1 and buzz in. But we have very small children. Sometimes we fear they could let somebody in. Something we constantly work on.
So ours are kind of similar concerns, and we can just head up there and kind of get a visual. It's a little different because we're close to the cafeteria.
Well, and in the past they have let people in. I mean, my kids both went through here. Kids,
yes.
People have been let in by their kids.
Yeah, they're little kids, yeah.
Yeah.
How are you? How are you? Hi. How are you? Good. I sent your email. I'm sorry I haven't responded yet.
It's okay. It was the day of a big meeting.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to talk about it in person more. You have a bigger question, so more casually.
Yeah. Or raise it tonight too.
So again, a lot of the same problems that Jason has. Obviously, there are some other challenges like those doors. We want to keep them closed if we can. Like we want to keep them closed, however, it limits access. So then if a student had to come down here and go get something, they can't get through there. There's just a lot of challenges with just that. It almost becomes either totally open or inaccessible, for kids. So that area alone is kind of sketchy. But this part, we buzz people in, just like Jason. We have the same yellow signs all the way around the building. For the most part, people do a really nice job of going to the main entrance. So that works. It's just, his office is a ways away. Our office is a mile away. And it's, in a minute we'll walk down by there. But the part that really kind of just gets to me a little bit is the only thing standing between the outside and at lunch, 250 kids, is like 15 feet. So it's never good to have, I don't think, the largest population place of your kids so close to the entrance, and with no adult necessarily in between there. So that alone is it's just not a good practice. I don't think when the building was designed, we were in the same times that we are now, and I think it was probably, it's okay to walk by and to have your office more centrally located. It kind of became the center of a school as opposed to the gatekeeper of a school. So I think building designs in themselves have changed a lot over time. And really you wanted your office to be the hub of the building and the central part of the school, and now that's really not the case. So So that is one of the huge challenges, is we buzz people in, and it's a small community, so typically we know them, and they're very well trained, so typically they do a nice job of walking. But if you were somebody that was just budgeting in for the first time, you'd get here and really not know where to go. You could go there, you could walk right into the cafeteria. Those doors are locked, but often they get propped open. You know, and you can see there's a little tint on the window, but still, you could walk here and realize that the place is full of kids. So.
And I think that's a great point, because I remember when all my kids were in Pond Cove, the first time that I came here, I walked through this and I was like, where do I go? I had no idea where the office was, and I was like, well, there's a hallway, I'll walk down there. So it is very unclear.
You had a good idea Pond Cove was over there because you had kids go through there, but if you didn't, you wouldn't know that.
Right.
Yeah, so I think it's kind of
there is a
limiting.
big sign right there, but it's not big enough for me.
Right.
And in
And it's a
normal
long-
seasons, you've had 1,000 kids coming through in a 2-hour period, you pretty much have to open the doors to
Right. So
let the
you
heat in.
just cannot keep the doors shut, really.
And you talked about like trying to train the younger children not to let folks in. It's hard with middle school students. I mean, if I'm out there and I see my kids' friends, they want to let me
They'll let you
in.
in.
But I'm like, don't buzz. But they want to, you know, and they've been trained to be nice to me.
And the other part is after our lunch, I get a call from Jason or from Sarah saying, oh, those doors are left open again. So after our lunch, we leave. And if those doors are left open, somebody could come in here and just have total access to Pond Cove. Because that door obviously has egress. But the door down there, you can just push and go through from the inside. So that's another concern, is we are often, without knowing it, kind of jeopardizing them. So, and as you can see, I'll walk down to the office with you, for those of you who don't know, and I mean, these hallways are full of kids, too. So like you have all this, just this long walkway. This seems unnecessary danger, potentially. So, usually those doors are shut. So one thing we have toyed with, and we've kind of done this on really cold days for us here, is shutting these two doors. And there's also a buzzer here. So that almost works, except for the idea of all the kids in the cafeteria are still in the middle. You know, so if the cafeteria was not there, this could just be an awkward long walk, which would be relatively safe because we could shut these doors. But it really doesn't matter because now you still walk by all the kids to get even to these doors. So these doors can shut and they can be buzzed, but it's just, so yeah, so even here, you're almost to the office. You could turn left and take a long trip down and be basically free in the whole place. Obviously it doesn't really happen, but, so you have to come here to sign in, drop stuff off. But there's a lot of footage throughout our building really without an adult kind of interacting with you, other than buzzing you into a door. So, any questions or thoughts about any of that stuff? No, that's kind of quick, but it's kind of pretty easy to see. You know, I've toyed with Marguerite. It'd be great to steal the art room because that actually could be an entryway for us.
We had talked about having
I can walk in and show you guys this because it looks like we're ahead of the other group.
Put a window through the wall here and lock it.
Yeah, Marguerite does not like this conversation at all.
I pull up the floor plans, it's just like, how can we do this? But the actual entrance will be.
So this potentially could become a main office because there's a walkway that comes right up through the middle here. And there could be like another door in the main office to buzz in. So I think potentially there's a solution to be had there, but it's not cheap or without cost, and we'd have to find a new place for our art room, which currently there's no rooms available.
And that's because the fix at the front door is a couple years out?
Well, no, it could be unless there's an alternative solution, but I'm saying if there was a whole building renovation of addressing the cafetorium, the main entrance, I mean, by the time it goes to bonds and you do those things, and I'm sure it's a couple of years out to do the whole thing, probably 5.
Yeah, probably 5.
There could be an intermediate step decided on and done, but I don't really know how much time and money people want to invest in a potentially temporary solution. So I don't know. I know that it's an uncomfortable situation. Doesn't seem like there's an easy, quick fix. And this was one that we had kind of beat around a little bit that this could become the main office because there is a walkway right up there, and you could potentially stop people from walking through the school. But there's no art room. So we'd have to figure out that solution. But that really doesn't solve the Pond Cove issue, kind of selfishly might solve ours. So do not tell people I'm taking this art room. There'll be a...
It's this, right?
Yeah.
Perry, how old is it? Perry, how
What was
old
this
is this
building?
section?
We call
40?
it 1930s building.
30s.
Yep.
Ooh, there's a potty up here now.
Yeah, hello.
They didn't tell you we were coming?
No, no.
We'll be short.
Okay.
Yeah, so from what I understand, it's the parapet wall, but I don't have any documentation
The
on that.
what? The what?
It's the parapet wall. It's when you see when you look from the outside and the roof is peaked in an A shape, there is a wall that extends about 2 feet above the peak. Somewhere in the flashing where the roof meets that wall, I'm being told is the problem. And it runs down that wall. It didn't happen at all last year. So it's a certain type of rain, the direction the wind's blowing, maybe some snow came into it somehow and caused it.
How many years have you been doing it?
It's a
Forever.
famous leak. People have talked about that forever.
Forever.
I've been facility
I would say
director.
And you've had roofing
decades.
contractors in here and they haven't been able to prescribe a fix?
I've only been here a year and 6 months.
Oh, okay.
And in my time, this is the first time it's leaked.
Yeah.
I got you.
So,
But
as I said,
Elizabeth,
we're trying to gain information as to what the last
but
director
when
had found. And
Elizabeth and Heather jump in on this with me, but when Greg Marles was here before Perry was here, it was leaking and it had been leaking
For years and
for
years
years
and
and
years.
years. But they did
I've
have
seen
someone
it.
come in to look at it, and really the feedback was very cryptic. It was almost as if it's not fixable.
Right.
It was very mysterious.
And then there were comments that there were layers and layers and layers of bricks that you had to get through, and
And
it
old
was
windows and
too much to get. I don't know. But just ask Mrs. Briggs. I mean, it's right outside her classroom, and it has been for years. She
And
can tell you.
It doesn't just drip. When my daughter was in 6th grade, she's in 9th now, and I was volunteering with Mrs. Briggs. Sometimes it's a drip, and sometimes it is a waterfall.
yeah.
It's just, and it's
I mean, they have a
and
bucket
it
like that,
splashes outside. I mean, it's not.
so it's slippery.
It's all.
Is there a mold concern?
There always is when you have
Yeah.
water. We don't have signs of that, but it has to be cleaned up properly, and we'll end up, once it's all dried, and this will all get torn down, and we'll check above and seal up what we can seal up. But there's always that concern when you have water entering a building.
right.
But we do annual testing. We do testing as needed. If anybody gives us a sign that maybe a teacher's saying they're having issues of breathing in their room or something like that, we typically do a test. So we're pretty much on top of any type of response to that.
You used to say a picture's worth 1,000 words,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
presumably you guys are taking pictures of this kind
Yeah.
of stuff from the situation.
Yeah, we'll learn more about this soon. I just need to dig into it a little more.
Literally.
Yeah. Yeah. Down into the basement, and this one here, do not meet life safety code. By life safety code, when you exit into a stairwell, into a building, when you go all the way to the bottom floor, there's supposed to be an exit. These stairwells have no exit. They only take you to another hallway. That door is typically locked, and even if it wasn't, you'd be in the basement. Theoretically, there should be a hall or doorway going inside here on either end. So,
And there's no. I mean, even if we did it, there's no. Is there room there to put a door?
no,
Yeah.
no, it'd be a total redesign of the area.
That's pretty key.
Yeah.
And
So it's
I mean, I'm just thinking of like,
There's
not like it's gonna happen, but I'm thinking of like the Twin Towers, everybody going down the stairs, not that that's gonna happen, but
right.
a
There-
funneling going
There's little
down.
things that you catch.
Yeah.
Something as
I mean,
simple as this door, and there's steps right there.
Well, that's it.
know-
My comment is always going to be about we have little stairs here and stairs. This must
Right.
be an ADA nightmare.
It's
Like a kiddo with, I had a kiddo with crutches, and it was
Yeah.
it was a nightmare. And then a permanent wheelchair kiddo.
Yeah.
This building
yeah.
Coming
is
right up the ramp.
horrible.
So where
Thanks
are
for
the
bringing that up.
exits?
There are exits though.
Out the front of the building.
Just the front
Yeah.
door?
At that level up there, you can go out the front door. And that's it. on
And
end
that
of
would
the
be
building.
for the 6th and 7th grade?
Yes.
Do I have this right?
I
Yeah.
believe, yeah.
Okay.
They'd all be going out that one front
Yep.
door.
Yep. I mean, they
Which
can,
is 250 kids. if
No,
it's
I
two
know.
grades worth.
yeah, no,
It's giving me panic attack.
well, no, there are so many smoke detectors and things in here that, aside of an immediate explosion, with all the people you have in here and all the smoke detection, the likelihood of something happening and nobody knowing about it and not having ample time to get out of the building is, I don't think it could ever happen. I won't say ever, but, 99%.
Yeah.
So it's more of a risk actually at night, when there's nobody here. If you're the only person in the building, or, whatever, and you fall down the steps or something like that, and it's, crawled your way down to the bottom step and, all right, I still can't get out, so.
Right.
Yeah, it's
interesting, like the building on the outside, it's so charming and beautiful and has so much character, right? It's in the 1930s, it's got these beautiful windows and everything, and you get inside and just realize like how...
the windows, Ruby, the custodian that was working,
Yeah.
the windows in the 30s building are very large. They're about 6 to 8 feet high. And the sash that you've got to pull down, I came here the one day because they said she was having problems closing it, and I wanted to experience this, and it pretty much took everything I had to push it down. It's not that there's anything wrong with the window, it's just the size of it and the amount of spring that needs to hold it up. It's just that strong that, the teachers, they can't close them, so they just leave them open. And the custodians have to close them at night, and that could be coming up in a capital improvements line.
My understanding from students and teachers is that it's really hard to regulate the temperature in this building as well, correct? Yeah. Super hot in the summer.
That's Cape Elizabeth wide.
Yeah, that's...
Town buildings as well.
Building.
Just a side note on that, I have got a new system to actually control the program that controls the buildings. We are currently switching over from a main controls system to a Cems, the new Cems system. We're starting with the town buildings only because they're a little cheaper to do, but then the schools will be next on the list, so it's...
Every little bit helps.
Yeah, I went to a school 2 weeks ago just to get trained on the beginning of how to operate the system. It's pretty neat stuff what you can do now.
Hopefully down the road, if there are renovations, we won't go down the same old heating systems that people used to always want to put in schools that never
The
work.
middle school band director here. We're going to be looking at two areas. One is the service entrance and the route from the service entrance to where everything goes, and the other is the band room. So if we move, I can feel the cold air right now. So this is our service entrance that all deliveries that are coming into the school, I think almost all of them, definitely the kitchen, right? They're all coming here.
Right in next to the playground.
Yes, right behind, and I know they come in because I see on here all of their trucks because they're right behind the band room door. So.
And they're backing in.
Yes, backing in.
Next to the playground.
Yes. So we see people moving in and out here all day long. It's always cold like this because the door is open. And this is, students are traveling this hallway as well. And that, fifth grade wing and fifth grade recess, this is where they enter and exit, is right here. While there are trucks.
There's a loading dock out there.
There's not a dock, there's just
Open space.
open space.
Driveway.
Driveway that they.
Yeah, you're welcome to look if you'd like.
No, that's all right.
And I
So,
just, can
But
I
all
just, because
students
there's
have
some
to
people who've never been in this building. So
Yeah.
the office is right at the end of this hallway to the left where we were.
Okay.
And we came up right
And
about
like
where that
cafeteria
guy is.
supplies have to come
To
in
the
through
right
here
is
and
the
go over
cafeteria.
there.
yes,
So how do they get buzzed in?
there's a camera and a buzzer. So
potentially these people can come in and
But this
go right
is
into
full of students
the
most of
fifth
the
grade,
time.
the
Yes.
fifth grade wing. That's all
Right.
fifth graders, or like right up to the gym and wherever we were. 'Cause the office is all the way at the end of
Yeah.
the hall, around the corner.
they have access to the whole school.
And they're not like approved delivery people, they could be anybody.
And this is full of kids. This isn't an empty area.
Yeah.
Right. No, this year in particular is always full of kids. This
Yeah.
is where the book fair happens. This
Yeah.
is where everything.
Yeah, I mean the fifth grade, like everybody coming, so fifth grade wing is here. So if they're going to the cafeteria or the office, they're going that way, or they're going to allied arts classes this way. 7th, 8th grade, 6th grade are coming this way. sometimes to go to the cafeteria, depending on the route. So this is one of the main places that all students in the school are walking.
It's a hub.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's recess right out there. There's gym happening. There's a lot going on in this area with trucks backing up and stuff.
Do they restrict deliveries at all, or can you see people here with pallets or, deliveries being made in the midst of a student population?
All day. It's constant, all day long.
And then trash coming out.
Trash coming out too. Yep. Yep. It's a very, very busy spot. Any questions? It's just an open space and the dumpsters are back there too. The sign is a result of that door being open. Okay. So before we head in, because everyone that walks in the band room always says, this is such a great space, because it's a bright space and it's organized, and that has to do with the very type A teacher that is in there. But it is also very organized because of the number of students that come in and out of this room. 60% of students in Cape Elizabeth Middle School are in band. So this year that translates to 310 students playing instruments in this room. So I have just kind of put some staging up. Obviously I don't have students in there. I have 18 instrument cases on the floor. Some of the bands have over 100 kids in them. So if you add 100 bodies, 100 instruments, 100 instrument cases, you can kind of get an idea of how tight of a space it is. You're welcome to walk around anywhere you'd like.
You needed some of the rolling percussion cases.
Yeah.
That take up so much.
Yes. So our smallest band is usually between 60 and 65 students. That's our 8th grade band. The only students I allow to unpack their instruments here are the big instruments, which are the ones that you see. Everybody else I have unpack at their seats. Even some of those instruments shouldn't really be unpacked at their seats. They're frankly too big. But we just don't have space. Some students actually have an assigned spot where they unpack their case just simply for safety. Earlier today we had 6th grade full band that has 76 students in it. So this floor looked pretty similar to what you see now. And at the end of full band I had a tenor saxophone player that was like yelling across the room as kids were leaving, Miss Ramsey, kids are hitting me, they're climbing over me to get out of the room, like they're hurting, like that's the daily reality. 5th grade band is between 100 and 110 kids each year. We don't even have them take their cases down to the band room. They all unpack their cases in their classrooms and walk down here. This whole area, so there'll probably be about 10 more chairs added for 5th grade band. And then this whole wooden area where you see the cases, that's all the 5th grade percussionists with their bell kits. So this room is really packed. And on those, like the times if we have a fire drill during full band, we all put our instruments down and we have to all go out that door. So kids are constantly running, and they're middle schoolers too, they don't have the best control over their bodies to begin with. So they're constantly colliding, and even just getting out to go to the bathroom is, I put an aisle in the middle too, so I can access them, but just so there's simply an easier way for them to get out. The storage that we have only facilitates the school-owned instruments we have, the 7th and 8th graders. So all 5th and 6th graders keep their instrument cases in their classrooms or in the hallways. And we've had students' instruments vandalized, we've had them moved. We simply just don't have enough space for storing their instruments. And that's a lot of money sitting around the school. And as another group mentioned, it's also a fire hazard in those classrooms and in those hallways. This is our only entrance and exit. And so when we have concerts, we move everything you see here out this hallway, down towards where that service entrance was, down to the office, past the cafeteria, down the Pond Cove hallway, and then up onto the stage. And this door is not big enough for some of our percussion equipment, so we actually take 2 of our timpani, which each cost about $2,000, and I have students help me completely tilt them up on their side to get out the door. Then we have to do the same thing to the doorway, to the stage, and then we have to lift all of that percussion equipment up onto the stage for every single concert. Except our 5th and 6th grade concert, which we hold at the high school, because that involves over 200 students and over 500 audience members, and we just simply can't fit. We barely fit on the stage as it is. We're crammed. It's like, this seems like luxurious space compared to how we fit on the stage. Like students like this. And I'm on the very edge, like my podium is on the very edge of the stage, and there are kids with their chairs on the edge of the stage. So we have, the good thing is we have a lot of kids involved. The hard part is we really don't have a space. We also, because we have so many kids in such a tight space, it's really incredibly loud in here. We have these really low ceilings. And that doesn't help. I've done decibel readings in here. It's well over what the OSHA standards should be for sound during our full band rehearsals. And our heating system, while it's lovely that I have control over it, unlike other people in the school, I can't have it on during classes because this is how loud it is. So the only thing that I figured out is if I leave the heat on overnight, it's warm enough for the day, and then the temperature drops.
So you have no heat in here?
Well,
during the day.
During the day
you have no
and those 4 windows, that takes 3 custodians to open and close them, and there's air leaking. So like even in, like when it's hot in here too, I can only open that, and like you can see the blinds move. We get water in the back door.
I'm so sorry.
Where do those doors go to?
Those go out to the service entrance, and originally that had been a fire exit we had, but then they're like, you can't have any of the percussion equipment there. I'm like, we can't function, so the solution was to remove the sign that said fire exit. Of course, if there was a fire and we needed to go out that way, we could, but it couldn't be official fire exit, because so that goes right out. So I see every truck in here, every truck that goes backed up too. Kids are really excited when they see the Coca-Cola truck, though. They're always pumped about that. Yep. So it's a for some band programs, this space might be okay, but ours, we have so many kids involved. It's really hard. Like I tape. You can see I tape off spaces for everybody's instruments. In the summer, I figure out what instruments we have in 7th and 8th grade, and I have to figure out where they can go. So everybody has, at least for 7th and 8th grade, a place to put them. So, yeah, I think that's everything on my list.
Different levels that are out in the cafeteria. I mean, it's dangerous in itself. We had a lady fall a few years back, right? Broke her hip or something.
Yeah, it was during an 8th grade graduation. Yep, 3 years ago.
So dangerous in itself. So this area. There's a ramp that goes down into the kitchen. You have these short stairs here. It's a tripping hazard. These aren't code, right, Perry? No. I think it was supposed to be a break room. There's a bathroom in there. They don't use it as a break room, right by the bathroom. This area, dish room, actually is pretty adequate. So we service both schools here, so this area is actually not bad. This is our stock room for, there's no order that's been in here yet, but roughly we can fit about for 500 people maybe in here. It's smaller than it should be for the amount of kids. Because we get all our government commodity food that comes in here. We can't store.
What do you mean you can fit 500 people in there?
No, 500, food for 500 people.
Oh.
How often do you deliver?
Every week we get a delivery. Once a month we get a government commodity. So, this is the elementary level. Again, the stairs, watch this step. Bigger, seems like a bigger serving area. We have these buckets over these conduits because I don't know what they went to before, but they're just in the way, tripping hazard. There's no drainage that there was supposed to be for the equipment. This equipment is old, so I don't know why the drainage wasn't put when they built this area. We only have 2 hand washing sinks, and we have like 10 people that work here. One is way up at the end, the other one is right here, so that's another thing that's inadequate. It should be by prepping areas and whatnot. This area is actually open. It's not bad, the flow isn't so great. They prep vegetables over there because that's the only garbage disposal that's available there. There's the only other ones is in the dish room, so obviously I don't want them putting vegetables in the dish room. This equipment, we've replaced over the past 5 years or so. We've replaced some pieces. These two down here are pretty old, and we bought them used probably 5 years ago now. It's a steamer unit and a braising kettle. We use to make sauces and all that. Walk-in cooler and freezer. We get all of our government commodity food, all our frozen food here because the high school freezer is really small. So, if you guys want to take a peek in here. This is the cooler where the refrigerated stuff is. And this is the freezer. So this is where we get our government commodity frozen food. It's not that cold. Take it in a truck and bring it down the street.
And that's a Cape truck, one of our trucks?
Sometimes it's my own truck.
That's good. But you gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah, I don't have a town truck. So, but yeah, we have, with our government contract, the state has, right now, it's North Center that has the delivery. They tell us when they're gonna deliver, and they give us an allotment of food, and they tell us how many cases. We have no way of saying we don't want that, we don't want that. So, one of the first deliveries that we had like 400 cases of frozen in here. And so we had to take half of it and ship it down to the high school and fit as much as we could in there. So that place was packed, and then this was packed. But also on top of the frozen stuff, we have dry stuff, all the canned fruits, all that stuff we get. So that's what the stockroom can get really
So they have a cooler and freezer down there too?
Yeah, but it's like a quarter of the size.
For a larger student population, or pretty big population?
Well, we do about 1,200 kids here. We serve about 1,000 kids a day out of here. So we do less down there.
Yeah.
So, yep.
And the floor in this cooler is coming to the end of its life.
Yeah, we talked about that. They pulled one of the panels and they were saying that underneath is
It's
disintegrating.
Yeah.
Disintegrating. So if I get stuck and go through the floor.
Right.
No,
I
they
hope
said
the door's
that
open.
We'll know where to look for you.
he's stuck in that period off to come dig me out of this. So, and then this area back here is wasted space. This was originally, this was supposed to be the delivery entrance. Have you been down to the other area where they deliver our food? This is where it was supposed to come in, but they changed it. But we've got some issues here. If you come up here, you see that this is settling. It's cracked all the way through.
Is that why it was changed?
No.
Why couldn't it?
It goes up to the, like a courtyard.
They turned around. Oh, that's a courtyard. Do you know why it was changed?
Because I heard that it was because Pond Cove didn't want to hear the trucks. Allegedly, I don't really, that's what I was told. It didn't make sense to me. So anyways, this, we do our barbecues out there and the kids can go out there. Also, there's a huge, that building separating from over there. Gary, you might want to take a peek at that. Engineer looked at it.
Oh, poor Perry.
So,
You're better off not doing this to him. He's just like,
I did want to add to the,
Please don't try to get your resume ready, we need you.
I'm not, I'm already noting things like things that I heard in the band that wasn't aware of, you know, it's like, I don't want to be on this tour anymore.
here to review us, we got spoken to about having, the POS system has to be after the service. So we have to make sure that all the kids have everything on their trays that constitutes a meal before they get here. So the salad bar used to be there, but these were up against the wall. So we had to move them back here, so they had to trench the floor and run the wire and all that.
Which impacts seating and flow.
So we lost at least 2 tables each section, plus up here because the deli bar. I mean, that's huge. Kids, utilize that a lot. So, and then we have our little extra gate here so kids don't go back and fall. It's just kind of put together. So, and they tried to put this wall up to try to alleviate some of the sound, but it really doesn't do any good. It actually makes it louder, I think, because they're all just competing on each side.
Can you remind me what the hours are that the kids eat? I mean, I remember one year my son ate lunch at 10:48.
Yeah, that's what mine.
Yes.
Well,
my son
well,
ate
this
at
is
10.
the
What's
first.
yeah.
This is the first year that it's been that early.
Okay.
It was
Last year was pretty early.
here.
Yeah.
10:45, now it's 10:41.
Oh. So yeah, 10:45.
Yeah, so
they've
it's
changed it. So we're
crazy.
trying to utilize, and it's like
Right.
between both schools, and actually, Pond Cove would like to have more lunches, but it would put them even further later. And I mean, the labor impact and all that, plus the seating. There's not enough to have. I mean, you can't go any earlier.
Too small for two schools.
Yes,
Simple.
absolutely. it
And
is.
we've got 20, I mean, at least at the middle school, there are 20-minute lunches.
Right.
So
And
they're within,
So I mean, you're gonna get 500 and some odd kids in 2 lunches. So we're going say 250, 275 each lunch for just the middle school, in a matter of serving them and having them for 20 minutes, so they can sit down and eat. So I mean, my crew they do a great job getting them out. But if we had a different facility, I think it would be even better.
And I have to say, just for information, at the beginning of this entire process, so not this fall of 2018, but 2017, when we
did it
started,
last time.
when we started
Yep.
talking with the architect and everybody, we were just having conversation, and both Jason and Troy, so the principals of Pond Cove, were you at that meeting? You might have been.
I think so.
And they were talking about, which was new to me. Of course, it makes sense, but I had never thought of this. That the needs of middle schoolers versus Pond Covers, like they would have very different type lunches. And in like the pie in the sky dream, Jason was saying, I would love to fit all of my students in one cafeteria at the same time, so that I have more instructional time. And Jason for Pond Cove was like, I would like a smaller cafeteria so that I can bring smaller groups and do like 3 different shifts.
Right. He
And
wanted to have separate.
he wanted more space. He wanted a calmer environment for these little like kindergarten, 5, 6, 7-year-olds to come in here where it's totally chaotic. And so they have different needs, but it's the same space.
Same
And so
space. So-
and one of their biggest quotes, which I absolutely loved, is they said, and I think it's applicable to this, but they were talking about it being a cafeteria as well as a auditorium, which we'll find out a bit later, was the architects were saying it's like a sofa bed. It's not a sofa, it's not a bed, and it doesn't do either really well.
It's not a good sofa and it's not a good bed.
Right, and so, I mean, I think it's so true here. Like, yes, it's a space, but it is just, and if you, I've heard this said 1,000 times, if you want to come see what it's like during the day when students are here, you'll be amazed, right?
And not to mention what Howard pointed out last year, which is they have 20 minutes basically to come in, get their
leave the
food,
classroom and
and
get
eat.
food.
And if there's a line, which there will be, sometimes kids have 2 minutes to eat their food after they've gone through.
We get them through really quick here, but one of the things that my
But they're
crew has to
rushing
work
their food. They're rushing to eat.
has to really work hard to change over, because it is different foods.
Yes.
We have a la carte here for middle school, and we try to alleviate the lines by serving down there too. So I've got 2 people that are bringing stuff down to the elementary side to try to stop, some of the overflow, and it's just a lot of extra
It must
work.
be incredibly stressful on the food service workers, and I think our complaints aren't with that they're not doing a good job, because
No, it's just the space is not
they,
there.
I think it's unrealistic expectations on people who do a really good job.
Yeah.
And
Stressful on the children.
It's so stressful on the
And when you
children.
throw in that they're coming to or from a recess, so they've got all their winter gear in the winter,
that ends up
and
over
it's
in the corner.
everywhere, and there's lost and found, and it's
And
just
if they don't finish
too
eating,
much.
there's, some students are bringing their lunches outside because they have to leave. They have to leave.
And like I was talking about with the other group, the serving area over here, when they come through, there's some kids that just want milk that might bring cold lunch. They have to try to go through, but they can't because there's not enough space, because they got the whole
Can't just
line
have
of
a
kids.
milk line.
Right. We have no space to do that. so the kids can't get through. There's like enough for one group to get through, and you might have a line of kids at whatever they're serving hot that day, or getting a soup, and you know, there's no way for the kid to sneak by and just grab a milk, so it takes longer for those kids.
We talked at the last meeting 2 weeks ago about having someone like Sam Whitney or someone record kind of that locker room and what that looks like after school, that transition. It seems to me like a brilliant idea to do the same thing here, maybe the transitions.
here.
Right, because I think I've seen it happen. It's
I think we might have it tonight.
And then the other thing, not my department, Perry's department. I mean, when we have functions here after, they want it turned over, and I mean, sometimes they want to do it at 1:30, and the kids aren't out of here till 20 after, and it's like all hands on deck. We're trying to break down tables and do that. It's just really stressful for that group to try to, you know, wash the tables, clean the floor, you know, and set it up the way they want it, auditorium style. So that's another thing. It's just not, it's not conducive to having.
I would think the turnover even between lunches to try to keep it clean must be kind of another unreasonable expectation.
Running around, yeah.
They work so hard in here. I've seen them do it, and it's amazing. They get it. They do get it all clean.
Yeah, because
in
we have to
between,
clean
but
all the tables in between every line, and then sometimes it's like the middle school. You'll see that they might be a few minutes early. They might let them out, so the kids are trying to come in while the people are washing tables because they want to get that extra time to be able to get.
Also, if I remember right, on Fridays, we do paper trays and disposables.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Not anymore? Okay.
Just the very last line, because everything gets dumped on Fridays, everything. And then if we didn't use paper trays on the very last line down here, the girls wouldn't get out till 2 o'clock.
Right.
You know, but they're all supposed to be out the building
Paper
at
trays a
1:30.
cheaper alternative to overtime.
Yes.
And we're trying to be, you know, green too, so we don't want to use all that paper, so we don't do the whole thing on Fridays.
But now we're using smaller receptacles, so now custodial crew is working harder to try to keep up with it.
Why are you using smaller receptacles?
That was through a recycling grant, and it was a request from the elementary school that there were issues with kids being able to see what they need to drop in.
That makes sense.
Oh, I see.
So the grant did the smaller cans.
Okay. But you know how many children sit here.
Right, so
You
that's
look
a
at the
lot for
size
you.
of those.
Yeah, yeah.
This is not practical.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to touch on, back to the coats and everything in the wintertime. After many years of being here, I've seen, I don't know what the solution is, when they come in from recess and they're carrying all that stuff and they're going through the line, they're dropping their stuff, they're dropping their trays because they're trying to not catch that mitten that they're dropping. They leave and their hats and their mittens are under the tables. Now, some of them are going outside with no hat, no mittens, or one mitten. They're dragging their stuff through the salad bar, contaminating it for the next group of students. So I think that all ties into the space. If there was someplace they could drop that stuff and pick it up, but there's nowhere.
Why can't they go to their locker?
There's not enough time.
They can't 5 minutes to put their coat in a locker.
During the 20-minute lunch, it's down to 15, right?
yeah.
And if they're way up in the 4th grade wing, so they come in from outside, go up to the 4th grade wing, and then come all the way down here, they're gonna lose more than 5 minutes just doing
Plus
that.
contractually, the teachers have to have 25 minutes for lunch. So if they're walking kids all over the building, that's getting into their lunchtime, and there's so many different lunch periods that it's hard to work that in too, so.
It has undergone several transitions. When the school was built, I want to say about 25 years ago, was when it started, the room was empty, save for, had the benches and the stage and this curtain, and that's it. Nothing else that would support actual performances. We did have one huge black speaker that was hanging there, and a couple of old amplifiers, so we were actually able to amplify with one microphone for a little while. I started a drama club right away. I started here soon after the school was finished, and after several years of actually renting lighting and stringing cable on ladders at all hours of the night for sometimes weeks on end, talked the district into doing a capital improvement plan and purchasing the actual lighting system. So that's when we had 2 permanently installed electrics out over the house, and we have 3 over the stage, which is pretty amazing for a middle school facility. 48 dimmers. We inherited the dimmer rack from the high school. At that same time, they were putting in an upgraded lighting system. And so we took their dimmer racks and put them in here. We have an old manual lighting board, which still has sliders, which is kind of great for teaching that stuff. And we have 24 instruments. And we added the projector along the way. So all that stuff is great and great for concerts and performances, but the room most of the time is a cafeteria. So there's the controls for all of that, both audio. Well, Cems provided the audio for us about 7 years ago, and we had some hardwiring done so that we can hook up in an audio mixing board at the back wall as well as right over here on this side of the divider wall if we needed it. The same with lighting. But the actual control consoles have to be set up and taken down every single day for every single performance because the room is a cafeteria. So they are literally on carts and have to physically take a table, set them out, plug them in, and make sure they're working, and then take them, strike them at the end of whatever performance or rehearsal is to put them away. And I have not been able to delegate that responsibility in all these years. So it's me that knows how to do it. If I'm teaching and Becky has a rehearsal, then either she doesn't have lighting and sound, or I just set it up and we go with whatever she's got. You know, if I've tried over the years to train middle school kids, but they're really not old enough to be careful with that kind of stuff. And obviously climbing ladders and focusing lights and stuff like that doesn't happen with them at all. But I still think that if we really are committed to sort of doing a different space for a cafeteria, that the room itself will support being an auditorium. And so I think the infrastructure is here that would enable, with some renovation and some modifications, to make it into a performance space that we can live with.
Is it possible to renovate the stage to accommodate our band, our chorus? I mean, because it doesn't now.
I know. Well, so one of the proposals that I had last spring when we were kind of doing the first round of this was to add 8 feet to the stage. And so that I think came out in some of the engineering work. What that'll do to the amount of seating that we can put in, I'm not sure. But we have a 4-foot extension that we set up for all of those concerts and performances now. For years I built a wooden one that I had, and then 3 years ago we purchased an actual steel, aluminum staging that puts legs and a nice apron around it. But even that is not enough because the bands have gotten bigger.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah, which is a great thing. And we really like to do, people often say, well, why don't you just do them at the high school? Well, the high school auditorium is very busy. And that would mean really trucking a lot of our stuff down there to do that because our bands are bigger than theirs. And,
well, seating for those events is also very challenging
yep.
for parents and grandparents,
Yep.
because you sit on these.
You do.
And if you don't get
Glad you
here,
mentioned that.
if you don't get
You've
here,
never gotten to see it. Yeah.
there's a whole art to how to get a good seat as a middle